Welcome to the Big 12 Insiders, your Big 12 sports show. Here's your host, Brian Hanley.
Hey, everybody, what's going on? This is your man, Big B, Brian Hanley, and welcome to Big 12 Insiders. Man, we got a lot to discuss today as far as this Houston versus Duke game. We're going to talk about that, who can win, who I think is going to win, best players, coaching. We're just going to kind of dive into the aspects of it. So wanted to get on and get alive. If there's people out there that want to come and watch, ask questions, bring your questions. I would appreciate it. But yeah, I think there's a lot to this basketball game that a lot of people aren't talking about. I think it's kind of a foregone conclusion that everybody thinks that Duke is just going to win. I happen to believe that Duke is the best basketball team in the country. I believe that. But I also think they can be beat. I think they can be had. And we'll break down all of those ways today. So I appreciate everybody being here. Thank you, guys. I really do appreciate the support. But before we get started, remember, as always, remember to like, follow, subscribe, continue to get in those comments, and always hit the notification bell so you know exactly when Big 12 Insiders content comes out. So first off, let's talk about as far as, the records. Both teams have just been outstanding. I mean, Duke is 35-3. Houston is 34-4. Both. I don't want to say that Duke walked through the ACC. Clearly, the Big 12 was a much better conference. And you think, well, Duke, they won all those games in the ACC, and they did, but they only won the conference by one game. Like, they didn't just run away with the conference and win it by 6 or 7 games. They won it by one. They lost one game in the conference. Louisville and Clemson lost 2. So it's not that they just dominated. They did dominate the conference, but they didn't just run away with it, But it's a weird sense because Clemson, first of all, beat Duke. That's number one. And which, again, it's college basketball. Anybody can win or lose on any given day. That's part of it. But you would think a conference as bad as the ACC, Duke being as good as it was, you would think that they would have won the conference by, 5 or 6 games. They did not. They won it by one game. Houston, on the other hand, won a much more difficult conference. They won it by 4 games. They lost one time, just like Duke did, but then that loss was by 1 to Texas Tech, which I'm going to say Texas Tech is probably better than Clemson. And Texas Tech, in my opinion, is far and away better than anybody else outside of Duke in the ACC. And there were several teams far and away better than anybody in the ACC. So the conference as a whole, they're just not the same. They're just not the same. Now, I will say this. You pick this Duke team up and place it in the Big 12. Do I think they lose 5 or 6 games? Probably not. I think they're that good. So I don't want you to think that I'm just saying that the ACC is bad. That's the only reason Duke has the record that they do. I don't believe that. I think they're ultra talented. But if we're talking about conferences and who each other played and who's tough and who's not tough and this and that, give me Houston all day long as far as competition that they played throughout the season. Yes, Duke played a tough non-conference schedule. Absolutely. I mean, you look at some of the teams that they played early. They played Kentucky. They played Arizona. They played Kansas. They played Auburn. They played those teams. And they lost to Kansas. They did. They lost to Kentucky. It was early in the season. They're just getting their feet underneath them. Again, they play a lot of freshmen, a lot of new guys, young guys, and they're trying to get themselves figured out. But they did lose a couple of those games. And we saw what both those teams looked at the end of the year. Kentucky a little bit better than Kansas, but Kansas didn't look anything like that they did early in the season, and not even remotely the same basketball team. Duke got better, a lot better. Now, you could also say the same thing about Houston. The thing about Houston is that Houston lost some games early too. But you look at who they lost to. They lost to Auburn. They lost to Alabama, San Diego State. You may not think San Diego State's very good. I mean, they were an NCAA tournament team. So they didn't lose to any slouches. Then they lost a game in conference to Texas Tech, kind of like Duke lost a game in conference to Clemson. But, they didn't lose to slouches. I mean, one of the teams is still playing. Another one of the teams played last weekend with them, didn't lose to the Elite Eight. So, as far as Houston is concerned, they played really, really good competition. Both of them did in the non-conference. You can't take either, that away from either of them. They both played really good competition. Now, so that kind of speaks to their records and what it looks like. Both went on huge winning streaks, lost the game, and then went on another huge winning streak. And they're both in the midst of that second long winning streak right now. So both playing, in my opinion, their best basketball. And that's what you want. That's what you're asking for, is for to be playing the best that you can play at the end of the season. We saw that for both. I mean, you look at Duke, what they did to Alabama. Now you knew Alabama wasn't going to hit 25 3-pointers again like they did the previous game against BYU. But you didn't think that they were going to get shut down to 65 points. That kind of talks to you a little bit about how good that Duke's defense is. They're playing really good basketball. If you can slow down Alabama to 65 points, you're doing something. You're absolutely doing something. You could say, well, Alabama missed a bunch of shots. They did, but maybe Duke had a lot to do with that. That's kind of my thinking. I think Duke had a ton to do with that, especially Alabama going from shooting. They made 8 3-pointers. They go from shooting 49% against BYU to 25%. Go from making 25 threes to 8, couldn't get it figured out. Duke just locked them up. Now, the best player on the court is going to be Cooper Flagg. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. You could probably say maybe the first two, I don't know about 3, but maybe the first 2 players, when you're just counting down the top 10 players on each team, probably belong to Duke. But far and away, Cooper Flagg is the best basketball player on the court. He is. And he does it on both ends. He does it on offense. He's not a selfish guy. He creates for himself. He creates for others. He rebounds on both ends of the court. He defends. He defends on the perimeter. He defends and can be a rim protector if you need him to be. The guy, he does it all, and he's 18 years old. His skill set, and I don't even need to talk about, his pro prospects. That's not what this game is about. This is about what he's going to do against the game against Houston. I mean, he's just the best player. He's the best player in college basketball, simply put. That's what Cooper Flagg is. However, let's not discount what Houston brings to the table. They've got a bunch of guys that are just super hungry, that have fought and have developed into very good college basketball players. Now, you might say, well, come on, Big B, none of those guys are going to be high draft picks in the pros. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. More than likely they won't. This game is not being played in the NBA draft, ladies and gentlemen. That's not what this game is about. This game is being played at the college level. And at the college level, if you're a really good college player, you might never even play another game of basketball in your entire life. That doesn't mean you can't be an outstanding college basketball player. And Houston's got a bunch of those guys. And again, I'm not saying none of those guys are going to play in the NBA. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is they got a bunch of hungry guys that fight and dig and grind, and they're good college basketball players. You can't put a price tag on that. You can't. So that's why I give Houston the chance to be able to win. My man in the comments section here, Keith, I love how just love Houston's defense. I don't know if Duke can stay with it for 40 minutes. That's kind of the theme here. Can Duke stand up to, and it's not like 40 minutes of hell like Nolan Richardson. These are just guys that say, we're going to guard you when you cross half court. We're going to guard you, and we're going to get right up in you. We're going to get physical with you. We're going to get tough. All of that stuff, that's what Houston's going to bring to the table. It is a very, very difficult defense to deal with. And we've seen it all year long. We have seen Houston just get after people, disrupt what they're trying to do, and good offensive basketball teams. We've seen it. We've seen them do it. Are they going to do it again to Duke? This will be their biggest test. That much I know, because Duke is the best basketball team that they're going to have played all year. Now, another aspect to this, coaching. Talk about coaching. Look, there is no question that John Shire is an up-and-comer. He's done a great job of recruiting. He has done a great job of molding this basketball team. You know, he's done a great job of just coaching this basketball team at Duke. You can't deny, he relates to these kids. You can't deny the job that he has done. You can't. Even though he hasn't done it that long, he's established himself. Now, I'm not going to disrespect people and say he's a top 5 coach in the NCAA already. I'm not going to do that. But I don't think, if you're saying he's not in the top 10, which I put him in that, I'm not going to say he's far outside of that. He has done an outstanding job early at Duke. And you can say it's easier to coach at Duke. Okay, well, he's got the job. And maybe it is easier to coach at Duke because you get access to all the best players. Well, okay, great. That's not his fault. Don't blame him. But you still have to coach it. We talk about Coach K and all the good that Coach K coached for 40 years, has 5 titles. Not 15, 5. So it's not easy always winning the whole thing. And we know how great of a coach that he was. Everybody talks about how great Coach Pitino is, and he is. Coach Pitino's won 2 in all the years that he's coached. 2, not 8, 2. So, it's not easy. It's not easy, man. And so to have this type of success early says something. To me, it does. To me, it does. And they've built a juggernaut. Having said all of that, he is not Kelvin Sampson. He is not Kelvin Sampson. I don't care what anybody says. Number one, Kelvin Sampson's, if you want to call him old school, I think that probably fits. Kelvin Sampson gets in your face, coaches you hard, grinds you when you make a mistake. And here's the thing. The kids love it. They have bought in. They accept the coaching. And whether you think, society and kids are different, that's a different discussion for a different day. But what I do know is, in a day and age of the transfer portal and NIL, where if I don't like what a coach says to me, I can just leave. How did he build the type of team that he built and the kind of culture that he has built at Houston, who doesn't have the biggest NIL? How did he build that if the kids aren't bought in? That's all I'm saying, man. They bought in. You go to Houston knowing what Kelvin Sampson is going to bring to the table. You don't go there with any illusions of how he's going to be. Hell, even if you never spoke to him, or if you go on a recruiting visit and Kelvin Sampson and the whole staff just lied and said, oh, how nice everybody is and yada, yada, yada. If you just watch a basketball game and you see how he is on the sideline and you see how he gets in the face of everybody, you know what kind of coach you're going to get into. And if he's doing that on the sidelines in the game, what is he doing in practice? What is he doing in practice? That's all I'm saying. Kids understand what they're getting into at the University of Houston, and they love it. They've built a culture, a winning culture. They accept coaching. That's the one thing that a lot of times people don't talk about. They have accepted coaching. And when you accept coaching, that means something. That means you're doing it the right way. When you get kids to accept the coaching, you're doing it the right way. It's another thing if you're screaming and yelling and all this stuff and nobody responds to you. Well, you're not really doing it the right way because nobody's responding to you. You You can tell me everything that you want to tell me, but if you can't get kids to do what you need them to do, well, then what's the point? You know what I'm saying? But he's getting kids to do what he wants them to do. They're responding to it. Houston's got a culture. I talked about this yesterday. I think Houston has taken over the Big 12. Yeah, they've only been in it for 1 year, or for 2 years. Yeah, I understand that. And Kansas ran it forever, but they don't run it anymore. Houston's taken that conference by the horns, and they're running with it. There's other teams competing, but they're not at the level that Houston is right now. Will it change? Maybe. But right now, it's Houston. And that's why I give him a chance, because Kelvin Sampson. I give the coaching edge in this matchup to Kelvin Sampson. He's done it forever. He's done it well. He's built the culture. And again, it's not built on all 5 stars. And I don't want to get into which way is better, because I don't think it matters at this point. You know, you could say, well, Duke's got a bunch of 5-star guys. They got guys that are going to play at the next level. And maybe Houston has 1 or 2, maybe 3 guys that'll play at the next level. But they've done it by, developing, bringing guys in, developing. None of that matters at this point. It's all about, what are you going to do on the court on Saturday? Who wants it more? Who's going to make the play that needs to be made when the game's tight? And that's why I give the edge to Houston, because Houston is battle-tested against better competition. Now, the non-conference is the non-conference. But for how long has Duke been playing? Now, don't get me wrong. They're in the NCAA tournament. They just shut down an Alabama team that I think is ultra-talented. Ultra-talented. But you start looking at, okay, who were they playing during the regular season? I mean, there's a stretch of Duke where they played Pittsburgh, Notre Dame, Miami, Boston College, Wake Forest, NC State. Then in North Carolina, if you want to say North Carolina was any good, but they weren't, and they should have never made the tournament. Syracuse, then at Clemson, then California, Stanford, Virginia, Illinois, Miami, Florida State. Now, Illinois made the tournament, but they beat them by 40. Florida State. The ACC was just garbage. That's not being battle-tested. I'm not blaming Duke for that, because you can't blame them. You can only play who's on your schedule. But that's not being battle-tested. It just isn't. You go through the same stretch for Houston and who they played, okay? And I'll even start with Oklahoma State, BYU, TCU, Kansas State, West Virginia, UCF, Utah, Kansas, West Virginia, Tech, Arizona, Baylor, Arizona State. To end the season, remember when I said if Houston were to win the Big 12, I said Houston will have earned it, because they had the toughest stretch out of anybody that could win this thing. Their stretch was the toughest. They played Iowa State, Texas Tech, Cincinnati, Kansas, Baylor, Colorado, BYU, Arizona. That's how they ended the season. And they won them all. That's battle-tested, people. That's battle-tested. Again, nothing against Duke. Not taking anything away from them. Again, I'm not blaming them for their schedule and their pathetic conference. It is what it is. But if you're going to tell me who's more battle-tested down the stretch, give me Houston all day long. And that's why I think Houston is going to win the game, because it's going to be close, or it should be close. And when it comes down to making the play at the end of the game to decide it, I'm going to go with the team that is more battle-tested and also has the better coach. That's what I'm going with. I may be wrong. Houston may get blown out. Houston may blow them out. I don't know. But I think the game is going to be close. And when it is, I'm going to put my faith, just like I said, in a team that is more battle-tested in close games against good competition, and who I believe is the best coach. That's who I'm going with. That's why I think Houston has a chance, and that's why I think Houston's going to win the game. So I appreciate it, man. We'll be back tomorrow. Thank you, guys. As always, remember to like, follow, subscribe, continue to get in the comments section, and always hit that notification bell so you know exactly when Big 12 Insiders content comes out. I appreciate you. We will talk to you guys soon. You guys have a good one.
Thank you for watching the Big 12 Insiders, your Big 12 sports show. This has been a Spirit Street production.